Thank you for joining us for the Living on Purpose, Not by Accident podcast, brought to you by Summit Financial Group and Remedy Live. I'm your host, Heather Herron, and joining me for this segment is Javier Mondragon with Bridge of Grace. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story about the many ways in which you live with purpose and live on purpose. Share us a little bit of your background and how you first came to the United States.
Yes, so I am originally from Mexico. I'm the youngest of six, live in poverty in Mexico, very violent neighborhood. And that's how I grew up. And then I was 17 years old when I came here to the United States. Before that, I was part of a gang. I experienced, from 12 years old, I was doing things that not a 12-year-old should be doing. I was seeing things that no 12-year-old should be seeing. And so from 12 to 17 was a really tough time. My mom passed when I was 17, so I had no father, no mother. And then I came here to the States because I had a brother who invited me to come and get out of the environment that I was in. And so when I came here 2 weeks later, I came to Christ. He invited me to this Billy Graham crusade, and that's where I came to Christ. And then everything changed from there.
And so your first leap into the nonprofit world was with Bridge of Grace?
Yes, this is our first. We came here to plant a church here in Fort Wayne. It's 15 years ago now. And then Bridge of Grace is 10 years old. So we established Bridge of Grace 10 years ago.
And tell me about what its intent is.
Yeah, Bridge of Grace is a non-for-profit. We're a community development organization. We're building thriving and sustainable neighborhoods in Southeast Fort Wayne. So we're in the underserved community, the inner city, and we are just there to create change and bring people to Christ.
And you make it sound as though that's an easy endeavor, but I know it hasn't always been easy. What are some of the challenges that you have faced as you've really been digging into making this happen?
Well, the first one, this is our first ministry. My wife and I went to seminary, and then we came here. Didn't know what I was getting into, with the type of neighborhood we moved into. I mean, we knew, we're in the poor area. We knew about crime, but we didn't anticipate how much crime there was in our neighborhood. So that was the first challenge. Then the second challenge, I think, as a church, when we started the church, we noticed I live in the neighborhood right next door, and I try to go talk to my neighbors and just kind of invite them and introducing myself. And I realized later that they didn't trust the church. So the church that was there before they closed down, didn't do very good for the community. I think they were like the bad neighbor. And so I came, and I'm here inviting them. I'm here, very happy about inviting them to church. And I realized that they didn't trust. So that was one of the biggest challenges. It took 7 years before our neighbors actually started trusting our church.
And so what kept you going during that time? I'm sure you got frustrated and disheartened at the challenges.
Yeah, it was hard. And then we had also 2008, the same year that we planted the church, we had the recession. Is when the recession hit, and we lost some families that we were already talking to and reaching out to. What kept us going is basically, I think, living in the neighborhood was so important. Getting to know my neighbors and just knowing that I was in the right place. I think one of the things that you're talking about purpose is that the things that I experienced when I was growing up, I realized that a lot of the children and youth in my community are experiencing the same things, right? They have these pressures from gangs, from drugs. There's a lot of single moms, like in the 46806, the zip code where we are, I think is the highest number of single mothers. And so I lived, with a single mom, and I can relate, I guess, to the challenges that they experience. So that's what kept me going, knowing that, hey, maybe I experienced those things because I'm able to use those things, or God is able to use those things here.
I know you said you came to Christ shortly after coming to the United States, but what had your plan been prior to that? Or did you have one? Did you have a purpose?
Yeah, well, my dream, I remember when I left Mexico and my brother invited me here, I said, I'm going to go to the United States. I'm going to make a lot of money. And then I'm going to go back and open a restaurant, and I'm going to buy a really nice car for me. And that was my plan when I came.
And things turned out very
Things
differently.
yeah, very different. Yes. Realize that it's not easy to make a lot of money. I realize that it's very expensive to live here too. And yes, but after 2 weeks, when I came here and I came to Christ, then a year later, I felt God calling me into ministry. And I wasn't sure what that meant either, but I knew it was something bigger than myself.
Yeah. What was that moment, the pivotal moment when you decided, I'm going to come to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I'm going to build a church in the southeast side of town, and I'm going to do things that really have an impact and make a change in this community?
Yeah, it was a journey. It was really a journey. I knew again, our first ministry made a lot of mistakes, but it was a journey because I came and I wanted to start a church. I did knew that I wanted to do that. I didn't, after we graduated from seminary, I didn't want to go to a church that was already established. I wanted to start from zero. And so that was important to me. And this was an opportunity. But the journey, as we started to live there and we started to see the needs and the context of where we were, then, where we are today as Bridge of Grace and what we do, it's been really just learning the needs and the context of where we are and acting as a church, what would Jesus do to meet these needs and to live in this context.
Have you had people in your life who have been influential in some of your decisions or some of your determination to stick with it?
I had a lot of people. I'm very thankful for God, even to God that He's put a lot of people in my life, even before I came to Christ. Like I can remember so many people, but there's one in particular that I really admire. His name was Mr. Ian Rowland. Ian Rowland here in Fort Wayne. A lot of people, if you're from Fort Wayne, you know the name. When I first started the nonprofit back in 2013, we met. And, when you meet with a person like that, it's like every meeting you have, you want to listen. You want to pay attention to what they said. And I do remember a lot of things that he said, either in events or just in our regular meetings that we had.
Has there been a time, and you can be honest, that you have thought, I'm just not sure I'm cut out for this. I'm just not sure I have what it takes to make this work?
Many times. I think as leaders, a lot of times when we look out from the people outside, people think that, we got it all together and we're doing good and we're just so competent. And I think a lot of times, I've seen, I kind of realize, man, why me? And do I really have what it takes to continue? And I feel inadequate, I think is the word.
And you mentioned that your purpose has really been to serve the underserved. Just tell me about that. What is it on your heart that makes you want to serve that community?
Yeah, I think relating to them, because that's the way I grew up. I think that's one of the reasons for sure. There's a quote that I remember reading from Mark Twain. This is maybe 10 years ago. Just at the beginning of Bridge of Grace, and it says, the two most important dates in your life is when you are born and when you learn why. And that was so important to me because I think, again, when I came here and I lived in that community and started to get to know my neighbors, I realized that it was so similar to what I experienced. And before, I used to ask God, why did you allow me to go through these difficulties in my life, from 12 to 17, a lot of trauma that I have, a lot of things that happened that I wish they never happened, and a lot of regrets, that I experienced. But I think now when I was there and I started to get to know the kids and what they experienced, I said, oh, I know why. Because He can use it to be able to change other people's lives.
For those who are watching or listening and may think, well, I have an idea. I know what I want to do, but I don't even know how to get started. How does a person even begin fulfilling their purpose?
Yeah, I think you have to ask yourself, like there's a book too, Purpose-Driven Life. And I read that book the first year I became a Christian. And it was so important to me too, because I think I learned that you matter, right? That God has a plan for you, that you are not an accident. And I think people need to understand that, right? It's the first step. Is if you understand that you're not an accident, God created you for a purpose. There's a reason why you're here and why what you are where you are, wherever you are. That's the first step. Is knowing that, and then living a life with a good attitude. I think attitude is so important, right? When you change your attitude, you change everything, and that's really good. That's important.
I know you have big hopes for the future. So what's next? What are you predicting or hoping will happen for you in the next 5, 10, 20 years?
We do. My wife and I are committed to stay where we are. We just believe that this is where God wants us to be at this moment. We feel this significance, this important task that God has for us. And so we are committed to stay, and we are engaged and involved with a project right now that hopefully, our hope is to break the cycle of poverty of so many families, of so many children that are growing up. We have an early learning center. We have a vision for building an early learning center that would help 150 children to 200 children a year, and hitting them early from 0 to 5, so that we get them before they go to school, and so they're getting ready before they go to school, and they're ready to learn and hopefully change their trajectory for the future. We're doing housing, so trying to for families to also own a home and build a legacy for them and for their families. And so people who never owned, who always rented, now they would have an opportunity to own and to leave a legacy.
Speaking of legacy, what do you hope yours will be?
Oh, wow. For my kids, when I look at them and I watch them all the time, I think I just want them to know that it's not about themselves. Like it's everything that we go through, all of our experiences, our circumstances, like it's not for ourselves. Like we can use it for others, and it has to be helping others. I want my children to remember me that I live a life that it was not for myself, that it was to help others, and always to have an outward focus.
Well, I know you are doing phenomenal things in the community, and I appreciate the way that you do live your life with purpose and with intent. And nothing seems to be done by accident by you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Yes.